Big rabbit bush.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Am I audible and visible?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes,
Hello.
ma'am.
Okay, okay. So, can you all please come up on camera?
Hello. Good evening.
Hi, hi. Okay, I'm giving 2 minutes. You all can come up on camera, not an issue.
Yeah, I'm coming in 2 minutes.
Sure, 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 sure. Okay, did you all get a chance to see the like recording of yesterday's class?
No, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Okay, so I'll start off. Akanksha, you can start the recording. Okay. So, yeah, Alpa ma'am said she's coming up on camera. What about others? I request everyone to come up on camera. So, yes, today we are going to have our second day of webinar that is on grief and trauma. So, before starting off with this session, I would take up 2 to 3 cases on grief and trauma. Again, as you all understand, it's very sensitive. So, people, whoever would be getting triggered, please stop me then and there so that I also can understand. Okay. So, what do you all understand by grief or what do you all understand by trauma? What is grief and what is trauma?
I
Grief
think it's
is
an intense
can
feeling when we felt like of sudden death, है ना? And when we lose our beloved one.
Mm.
Something like that.
Okay. Yes, Hema ma'am.
yes, ma'am. Grief is like losing someone, any loss of a loved one, whereas
Okay.
traumatic event is like getting into shock, like we being experienced some painful event which causes us to be in the shock or panic about the situation.
Okay. Okay. Any other opinion from anyone? Okay, I believe. Okay, if you all want to say something, even you all can write it down in the chat box. So, yes, there is a difference between grief and trauma. So, what exactly is grief? Grief is a deep or intense response to something we have lost, or it can be a some sort of emotional pain also. For example, if I say today my grandmother died, now what is my grief over here? It is the sadness, it is the memory which I had with my grandmother, and also it is the uh, pain. Now, pain doesn't mean the physical pain, it's the emotional pain, the mental pain which I would be getting from the death of my grandmom. Neha ma'am wrote something. Just let me check. Someone who grief is a short term towards loss and trauma is long term for stressful event. Yes, 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 ma'am. Basically, grief is something which is associated in terms of, I won't say grief is something, but it's a response, whatever we are giving. For example, death of a loved ones, losing our job, losing our property, losing our dog or a pet animal, whatsoever. So basically, we experience grief. It's not that everyone would have to go through that phase. If I talk about grief for everyone is very subjective. For it might be I have lost a job and still I'm smiling. But for some people, losing a job can be in a very traumatic situation and then which results into grief, crying, not eating anything like a sort of appetite, fatigue, insomnia. Definitely, I'm going to talk about the causes and all. So, what exactly is grief? It's a loss or it's a natural response to a loss or an emotional pain. Clear what is grief? Okay. Next is what is trauma. Now, trauma is basically an event. Trauma is nothing just but trauma is an event. For example, people tend, I have seen most of the like, even we also tend to get confused that whether it's a trauma or whether it's a grief because both are interconnected. Trauma is, as I said, my grandmother died. That event which has taken place in my house, that is what trauma. Trauma is for everyone. My mom, my dad, whosoever are the members in my house, trauma is for each and everyone. But if I talk about grief, grief is very subjective. My mom can cry. I may not cry, but I am in a state of shock. Clear what is trauma and grief? Okay. Now, there is a difference between all these three. Now, when we talk about grief, we need to understand, or when we do trauma informed therapy, we need to understand whether it's a state of grief, whether it's a state of mourning, or whether it's a bereavement. Now, as I said, grief is something very subjective. But what is mourning? How we are showing our emotion. For example, crying. Crying is a sort of mourning. For example, eating too much, people not talking to anyone. Like there are individuals who don't talk to anyone, locking someone. Like for me, it can be my grandmother died and I have locked myself in the room. That is what mourning is. Mourning is how we are showing our grief, basically. But if I talk about bereavement, the time period which we are going through, it can be 1 month, it can be 10 days, it can be 2 months, it can be 1 year also. Bereavement is basically the time period which we are going. Clear about grief, trauma, bereavement, and mourning?
Yes.
Alpha ma'am. Clear. Okay, okay.
Ma'am, can you
Then,
please give more examples for grief and trauma?
Grief and trauma. Okay. For example, if I talk about trauma, a divorce. Let's take an example which is pretty clear right now or which is very popular right now, grey divorce. I hope you all know what is grey divorce.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'll explain what is grey divorce. If I talk about Abhishek Bachchan and Aishwarya, A.R. Rahman and his partner, grey divorce is something which takes place after 50 plus. Like people who are opting for the divorce after their age of 50 or even plus. That is what grey divorce is. Now that divorce, the moment the divorce strikes, it's a trauma. But the process in which they are going through, for example, Ashwarya used to cry, now she cries also, or her daughter Aradhya, she is crying. That is the grief. Let's take an example again of molestation. We whenever we are traveling, okay, we have seen someone raping someone or molesting. Leave raping, it can be a sort of molestation also. For example, I have been molested, and someone of you have seen that yeah, Shraddhanjali is getting molested by anyone. So the one who have seen that yeah, Shraddhanjali is getting molested, for that individual, it's a sort of event that is trauma. Now I would be going through that process. That is again for me, it's a bereavement process. Now, how I'm showing that whether I was being molested every single day, I'm crying. Either of the day, I'm not eating. I'm not talking to anyone. I have locked myself in the room. That is what mourning is.
Ma'am, so we can say that grief is a type of reaction we give to a particular trauma.
Yes, it's a reaction, as a natural response, a reaction or a response, whatever you can tell.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. Next is there is a difference between grief therapy and grief counseling. Now we need to understand when we can call it as a grief therapy or when we can call it as grief counseling. Grief counseling is nothing but is just as the counselor would be helping them with this. It can be a counselor, it can be family members, it can be extended family members, friends, family, anyone. Basically, they are giving us support and guidance to cope with that traumatic event. And what is grief therapy? It's more of a therapeutic approach we are giving that individual to. It can be CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. It can be NT, narrative behavior therapy, with a combination of art therapy and again MBT, which is mindfulness based therapy. Definitely, mindfulness therapy works wonder. And there is a new term which is called CGT, that is complicated grief therapy. For those who have been in the process of complex trauma, definitely I'm going to talk about the traumas, but therapy is more of a specialized treatment we offer to the patient. or we offer to the client. Now, when I talk about counseling, even a counselor can do counseling. But if you want to give therapy, you need to be a certified therapist in any of the approach or in any of the modality. It can be you are dealing with no therapy, like psychotherapy, you are giving alternative therapy. Now, what are alternative therapy? Tarot counseling, oracle reading, pendulum dowsing, they are the sort of alternative counseling, like alternative therapy. Crystal healings definitely are more of spiritual things which people believe. That is the difference between grief counseling and grief therapy. Clear?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. Now, when I talk about the symptoms of grief, there are majorly three symptoms of grief. Definitely, we have subtypes. First one is the physical, which we get through our physical organs or physical body organs. Next is cognitive. What are the things inside our or the mental ability? Cognitive means mental ability to think. And emotional. It can be crying, it can be shouting, it can be showing temper tantrums. I would like to tell a case. I had a case of divorce, definitely a sort of grey divorce. This wife did not want to give the divorce, but where the husband wanted for opting for divorce, and this it came into more of emotional counseling. Now, sorry, not emotional counseling. It was more of a emotional setup. Now, whenever I used to start up with NT, that is the narrative therapy, the wife, she was being very resilient. She did not utter a single word. And it took me almost 7 sessions for her to come up that she do not want to give divorce to the husband. It took 7 sessions. Narrative therapy was not going well. Art therapy was not going well. Psychodynamic, I left it on 2 sessions. I did not work with that. Then suddenly I thought of doing some sort of art therapy along with a combination of sand. And then I figured it out that she had issued with her parents also. Because basically she has seen her mom and dad getting separated and what are the societal stigma she used to have when she was during her childhood. Like it was around, she said me somewhere at the age of 9 or 10. She was carrying all this trauma since her childhood. Now this manifested when her husband wanted for a divorce. Now, definitely in this sorts of therapy, I utilize CBT definitely because without CBT you can't progress. But there are so many clients who are like, no, I won't do CBT because they know अभी सबको पता है CBT बोल के therapy है. So we don't generally say that this is CBT or this is REBT or this is DBT. Nothing. What we do, we say it's a not normal sort of talk therapy because clients are very particular that ma'am, what sort of therapy you are doing. Today itself, I got a call, and the client was like, I know, I remember one of my team members received, and they were like, ma'am, he is asking for psychodynamic. I said, why? For what reason? Psychodynamic for no reason, because he was having issues with her husband. And she said, somewhere she read in an article that psychodynamic goes well if there is a communication gap. I said, no, it never goes well. I then had to take up a pro bono session for her, though I generally don't take. I took a 45-minute session. I had to explain what is psychodynamic. Then she was like, okay, I can come up for therapy. She was very reluctant to come up then. So, right now, we need to talk about why we are giving a particular therapy. Ma'am, I don't have any issue. अरे तुमको नहीं पता हमको पता है. We as a healer, we as a therapist know what approach to give. But clients are like, no, I won't. So that the time we don't talk about any sort of therapy, it's just we tell that we are here to support you because there is a difference between guidance and therapy. So we just use the water that we'll guide you. Then clients understands at least. So the very first thing is the physical symptom, the physical manifestation which we can see. Fatigue is one of the most. If I talk about all the eight, out of all the 8 points which I've written, three are most prominent. Number one is heart palpitation, a sort of palpitation. In this sort of thing, I remember people says that I don't know, I'm feeling very uneasy. अरे uneasy कहाँ पे हो रहा है? Please pin out. People can't say. It's a sort of palpitation, but they don't know what is palpitation. They would say something, I'm not getting that. I know my mom died, but I am not being able to communicate. I have my throat issue because throat chakra is over here. For people who have communication issues, we work on throat chakra. And that's the reason. Definitely, if I get clients from traumatic background, I use chakra healing also. But majorly, people have communication issue. No, I can't. A sort of delayed emotion or delayed trauma, pent up trauma. They won't talk. Next is very common nausea and fatigue. They won't do any work. They would go and they are like, no, I can't. And they would be crying. Crying definitely is not a sort of physical symptom, it's more of emotional, but crying is more popular. And the moment you are getting up muscle pain and weak muscle, we don't take up this sort of cases. If all the physical symptoms are present, then as a therapist, we can take. But particularly if you feel as a therapist that no, it's a sort of joint muscle, at least I would recommend not to take up cases. It's basically the case of Haddi Guddi ka doctor because we are not being able to give medicine. For joint and muscle pain, medicines are required. At the time, at least if you do not know any other consultant, refer to a psychiatrist. In the prescription, write joint muscle pain or joint pain and then refer to a psychiatrist because they need medicines more than any such therapy. And for upset trauma means it's a sort of appetite issue. In this sort of cases, we work with the nutritionist or the dietitians to change the diet system. Whatever, for example, today if my grandmother died and I had a routine with my grandmother, and it was not only the personal professional routine, her diet routine also. This time chawal, this time dal, roti, chapati, whatever. Now, when my grandmother is not there, definitely I won't be following that routine. I need a change in routine, and at the time we recommend to a dietitians. And for all this thing, we work hand in hand with other consultants also. Next is cognitive, okay, emotional symptoms. Now, in emotional symptoms, fear, anxiety, pain, depression, everything's come up. But we have to figure it out whether it's a sort of anxiety issues or whether it's a panic attack or panic disorder. Because most of the time, we can see that people coming up with panic issues, but mostly it's not panic issue. It's not a panic attack, but it's a sort of panic disorder. Then definitely more of CBTs are required. But if it is a panic disorder, then the time we need a psychiatrist intervention to reduce the intensity. Phobia can also be there. For example, I had a client when her mother died, she had issues with going up to that room because she did not had a very good rapport with her mother. She did not come for any counseling, like for grief counseling, she did not came up. She came up for issues that I'm not being able to go to that room. Yes, Neha ma'am. I believe her net is not working. Okay. So why she came up with the issue of that I'm not being able to visit that room because her mother used to stay in that room. And the moment she used to feel that someone is there. At the time, for all these cases also, we need the intervention of a psychiatrist. Without the intervention of a psychiatrist, we cannot go along with therapy because therapy won't do any wonder. Neha ma'am, you wanted to say something?
Ma'am, I was asking when can we call it a panic disorder?
Ma'am, your voice was breaking. You wanted to know whether it is a panic disorder? Uh, okay, I believe her call got disconnected because she's stuck.
Shraddhanjali ma'am, how do we know that it is panic disorder or panic attack?
Okay. So for panic disorder, the duration would be there every single week that individual is getting. For example, Monday and again on Wednesday or Tuesday. The duration, with the help of duration, we understand whether it's a panic attack or a panic disorder. For panic attack, it can be something I am being exposed to. Like for me, if you talk, I have issues with water, seas particularly, but I don't have any panic disorder. The moment I am being exposed to any sort of water lining, I would be getting a sort of panic, palpitation. My heartbeat start popping up like, Hare Shraddhanjali, run away. But if it is water disorder, even the thought of water would make me feel uncomfortable. Now I am talking about water. I don't have any issue. I am also drinking water. I don't have any issue. But if I would have panic disorder, that the moment I would start, even the thought or even the visualization of water or the sound waves would have given me goosebumps, and I would have feel a choking thing in my stomach, in my throat, everywhere. It's only the duration matters and how often we are getting.
Okay, okay. Now understood. Thank you.
Okay. Uh, uh, okay. Next is loan.
Anji, ma'am,
Ah, yes,
one thing
Shita.
I want to say, you are looking so cute today. Merry Christmas. I want to say that Merry Christmas.
In my place, it's too cold and I am
Yeah,
shivering like the picture. I'm like, मेरे को
yeah,
भी
that's
छोड़ो,
why.
थर्मल में
And you
जाने
dress
दो.
it like that, no? I think red color you wore.
Yes, yes.
That's
Okay, thank you. Neha ma'am, that was your question, that what is panic disorder?
Yes, ma'am.
Got your answer or should I repeat it?
No, no, ma'am. I got it.
Okay, okay, okay. Now for loneliness, now particularly if you have to address loneliness in terms of emotional thing, we talk about the childhood portion. We tend to figure out what was the childhood thing or what was the parenting style in which the child was born up. It can be anything. I'm not talking about the dysfunctional sort of child or dysfunctional family structure, but we majorly try to address loneliness in terms of inner child. Because, for example, if a child, if a boy, I would say a boy, but if an individual of 45 years is coming up with a case of I lost my wife or I lost my husband, and it's pretty clear that loneliness is there. Definitely, his wife or husband, whosoever it was or it is, 20 long years or 30 long years, they was in that relationship, and it's not possible for us within a session of 5 session 10 session to cure that individual. We can't claim that. So we try to adopt, we ask the individual to adopt some sort of coping techniques. Generally at the time we use the power of CBT, especially cognitive restructuring. Without cognitive restructuring we can't. And we address in terms of talking about the automatic thoughts which are coming up. Now, to address loneliness, a sort of role plays are required. So, if we are having a time, at least for 10 minutes also, I would ask anyone to be a therapist and want to be a like client, and you all can ask question. I would help you all to understand how cognitive restructuring works. So, at the end, I would take up 10 minutes, honestly. I wouldn't mind. Okay. And in case of vulnerability, we talk about any sort of molestation has happened or not during the childhood phase. It's not only in the adult phase, we try to dig more into the childhood. Now, people can answer that, ask me that it can be more of psychodynamic. Yes, I follow a psychodynamic approach also. Now, definitely, it's a sort of customization. If I feel I would be doing, I would do. If I feel that no, it's only on the upper wala spectrum, I would do so. But majorly in my practice, I go with the psychodynamic approach too to figure it out. Clear? Okay. Next is the cognitive. Now, as I said, in cognitive, we have to address all sort of automatic thoughts, the negative automatic thoughts, not only the automatic thoughts, the negative thoughts which are coming up. For example, I can't live without my so and so who have died. Now, if my age is 30 and my partner's age was 40, for example, a long 10 years gap. So it can't be in that spectrum that I am going to commit suicide or I am going to die. I have to live my life. Definitely, I would be having the emptiness feeling of my partner or whoever was in my circle. But again, as a therapist, we address all these issues. Now, when I did my training on trauma informed from Elizabeth Lewis, ma'am, she addressed it in a very cute way. That Shraddhan did not, she did not answer all the question, but she said us that no matter what the age is, we focus on making that individual much happier after someone's death or after someone has committed suicide. Because right now we need to take care more on our physical beauty also, because generally she has seen in her international practices that whenever someone is dying or some sort of incident happened, the one who was in the close circle, they tend to become very shabby. And at that time she asks the clients to go for beauty structuring. Now beauty structuring is a sort of western culture thing, which means basically every single day you have to go for manicure pedicure. Every 14, like after 14 days or after 20 days, I forgot the number of durations she mentioned long back, they have to go for facial, foot spa. Now in a month it has to be for thrice. That is what beauty restructuring in terms of Western culture is. Now she addresses all this thing in cognitive way by addressing CBT. Because without CBT, now clients who are very rigid, who are very stubborn, we don't use CBT. At the time we use art therapy only. कुछ भी therapy ले लो, we can do it. But if a client is very rigid, and at least I can ensure that we also tend to lose our patience. That yeah, the client is not responding, we tend to lose our patience, but we can't show. But मन में मन होता है अरे कब जाएगी ये. At the time we say okay, I'm not going to use any therapy. Go with art based therapy or expressive art therapy. Majorly art therapy, not also expressive art, but art therapy. Now for concentration issues, we use mindfulness. For attention, concentration, focus, to bring back the focus to normal life, we use mindfulness therapy. Now I believe anyone who have missed yesterday's class, you all can check the recording. I have taught about some of the activities, majorly 5 6 activities. What are the things you can bring back, how to bring back, you can get. Even if you're not understanding, I would be there to help you. But for poor attention span, or the third one, that is hard to concentrate, we use mindfulness therapy majorly, and to calm the client down.
From where we can get the recording?
In the group description, there is a drive link. The moment
Okay.
you click the drive link, you can see two folders. One is of the study materials and the worksheets, and the other is recordings.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. Clear about all these things? Okay. Now, the stages of grief. Now, before talking about all the stages, I would like to make clear that it's not at all in that spectrum or that line that we have to follow, or we as an individual or the client would be going through all the 5 stages. It can be depression as in the front, and then the client has accepted, or bargaining, and then the acceptance comes. But again, it's very subjective. Stages of grief is very subjective. Now, this was being developed by Kluber. Now, he was being most criticized. I won't say criticized, but a sort of controversial theory which he came up with. That is 5 stages of grief. He said that we all go through all the 5 processes. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to go through grief only when an individual dies off or there is a death in family. It can be you are not getting a house property after you have invested a lot and lot of money, also you are not getting the property. Then also stages of grief can come. In divorce, stages of grief can come. During marriage, stages of grief can come. Now how? Today I met a client, and though I won't say I met a client, it was a corporate session today, and she said that she is going to get married in this Monday. Like today is, I believe, Wednesday, coming Monday, and today at 10 in the morning, the would be called, like her husband called up. I won't say husband, as financier, he said something. Financier name, his name was. They cancelled the marriage, and it was only 3 or 4 days left. All sort of arrangements are being done. It is also a grief. She came to hospital, like she came to the like it was a corporate. She came to the IT firm, but she was in a stage of shock, bargaining. Why me? What? Oh, suddenly, what did I do? She was crying. Basically, she was crying. No other stages was right now very prominent. Only approximately the bargaining stage was very common. Why only me? What did I do? It was not an arranged marriage. It was a love marriage. And Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, oh Sunday. Only 4 days were left for our marriage. Venue fixed, food fixed, everyone got the invitation, e-invitation also, physical invitation. And then she said, I don't know what, but I feel my mom can commit suicide. Definitely, it's quite normal. So this can also be a sort of grief. Grief is not only that someone have died in my family and I'm going through the process of grief. Okay. So the very first stage of grief is it visible? I can't see. I don't know my
Yes,
PPI is.
ma'am. It's
Yes, it's
visible.
visible.
Yes,
Visible.
ma'am.
So the very first stage would be denial. Definitely, if someone dies off or there is a death in family, you would be in a stage of shock. ऐसा नहीं होता. Or it can't be. ऐसा मेरा I am very poor in Hindi. It can't be. Now I remember when my grandmom died, I was in the stage of denial. Then I came up to bargaining, and then I was in the acceptance stage. That too after 5 years of her death. Denial means where the individual would be feeling that no, my individual, like my anyone in the circle did not die. She is there, but she is right now not talking to me. I'll tell a real life example. One of my friend, she was being murdered. We were in class 9 or 10, and she was very close friend of mine. Now after that, when I went to meet auntie, basically her mother, she each and every day she used to tell me, Shraddhanjali, nothing happened. My daughter is upset with me, and she's I don't know where she is, but she would come back. And every single night, the moment it was 7:30 p.m., she used to go upstairs in the balcony and she used to stand there with the plate and with all the khana pinas in her hand that she would be coming back. Still now, believe me, it has been almost so many years. Because if I talk about nine, that was also in the year 2006, 7 or 8, not before that. So many years, still she is in the state of denial. Still, now though she is not in a normal stage, definitely she is in asylum. And every month I make a point that I would visit auntie, but still she is in a state of denial because they can't accept the fact that that individual is no more with me. Next is angry. Now, angry is like a sort of thing where you feel very anger, where you have issues with anger. For example, if I take about a different case, where if I talk about my own aunt, she was being diagnosed with cancer. Firstly, she did not have denial. Firstly, only I remember she said me, why me? Definitely a stage of bargaining. But how angry when she accepted the fact, okay, it's common, cancer is right now very common. She started doing something which would make her only feel angry. For example, at this stage, what she used to do, she used to say something to someone. For example, she used to tell my father that today you are not looking good, and because both are cousins. And then definitely my father used to say, why? What happened? Now she used to give a huge reaction, which was not required, which was not at all required. I remember she had once banged her head, and it was a terrible situation in my family, 2018 or 19. This sort of individual, the moment they enter into the phase, or this is a phase where they tend to become more and more in sort of frustration, they would pull out their hairs. I said my aunt that if you are going to a psychologist, that psychologist would give you that it's a sort of trichotillomania, because she used to pull her hairs before the chemo started, and after the chemo it was like a sort of bargaining. She took almost 7 chemo, though she is right now no more with us. But after 7 chemos, she was about to like get better. Suddenly it elapsed, and then we had to lose her. But anger is somewhere this individual tries to make others angry, but they would be angry and she would react in such a huge way that why did you say me? Choti choti baat pe they would react in a huge manner. Next is bargaining. As I said, why me? There are so many people. Why me? I'll tell you a case where uh, I don't remember the case properly. Again, this was when I was in the cancer hospital, working as a psychologist. This individual, she said, "Why me? Why me?" Matlab, she was at the age of 29 when she was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer. She said, I know one of my relative, she has breast cancer, and but doctor said for this client of mine, 29, that she was in the last stage at the moment she got diagnosed. And she said, I know I'm not going to survive, definitely. But the opponent client, aunt, sorry, PC, that means aunt, a sort of aunt relationship was only there. She said me that my aunt in the stage of fourth cancer, like fourth stage of cancer, 52, she is doing wonder. So why only me? Why I'm going to die? There would be a questioning, why only me? Now it's very common, why only me? And in divorce also it's very common. When I worked with lawyers, I can see why only me. This is a case of each and every house. But why only me is today I'm standing in the court. So this is a questioning stage. Now they would question on themselves also as well as to others also. Clear the three stages? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
There's
Yes, ma'am.
depression. The moment bargaining gets over, that okay, fine, now I have issues, they would be going into the phase of depression. Over here, what would be they do up? They would feel anxiety, they would feel stressed up, they would talk about all sort of guilt issues, that this is a thing, agar ye nahi hota to ye nahi hota, I would have not landed over here, I would have not lost my blah 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 blah. So many things. But over here, one thing is very common. They feel they have a feeling of hopelessness, helplessness, and worthlessness. Worthlessness is very common. I am not worth of doing so and so, and hence I am over here or I am in this situation. Worthlessness is pretty common, and hence a stage of depression. For people with this sort of stages, we need to talk about their guilt. We need to address about their guilt feeling. We need to understand what emotion they are showing us, whether it's a fear of guilt or whether it's a sort of hopelessness accompanied by guilt, whether it's originally guilt or whether the feeling of hopelessness is making the individual feel more guilty. Frustration would be there. Next is acceptance after each and everything. Now the client enters the very final stage, which is like accepting the fact, yes, I have lost my individual, or I have lost my partner or my closed ones, or I am having cancer, but I would find out some new way to cope with these losses. Now to keep up with this acceptance stage, ये एक दिन पे नहीं होता. It's a very long process. In fact, grief itself, a client coming up with grief or grief therapy is itself is a very huge process. Minimum, I'm talking about minimum 25 sessions are required. If you do CBT, 20 sessions. If you are doing CBT along with narrative therapy, usse bhi zyada. Because the sessions are only for 45 minutes. 45 minutes where you have to address everything, it's not possible. We talk about particular issues. Grief therapy and making the client come up to the stage of acceptance is a huge thing for like for us as a therapist also, because people think आपके हो जाएगा, होता नहीं है, इतना easy भी नहीं है. Talking about depression, talking about not only depression, sorry, not depression, talking about cancer, talking about losing anyone or suicide thoughts, like suicidal issues, talking about murder, talking about divorce. It takes time. It literally takes time. It can be for 6 months also. I had a case long back. It took me 2 years to make the client accept the fact that her husband is no more. Now, no more but doesn't mean that she has lost. Both of them parted away. The husband went off to some other state, and she's right now here. She was there, not, I don't know about right now, but she was here, and they wanted divorce, but it was not a divorce because they did not had a registry done, so hence divorce was not there. It took me 2 years, 2 long years, and every single day I remember I had to work with this client on every single week. So these are the things of stages of grief. Clear about the stages of grief? Yes, Neha, ma'am.
Ma'am, I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but I have seen this thing, stages of grief in a case of breakup also, when someone break up with somebody in a relationship. So I have seen them that at the sometimes in initial stages they are having this thought that they can't leave me, they still love me, they are still concerned about me. There must be something else with why they are doing like this. But they are not able to accept the fact that that person is no more even interested in being there with them.
Yes, yes, it happens. I'll tell a very own personal case. When I was about to when I got my divorce done, I did not enter any stages. I only entered the stage of depression. That too, it was for 6 long months, and then I accepted the fact. Yes, my husband is no more. Like he is no more. Matlab, he went for a process of divorce, so we have parted away. So no other stages, but only depression was very prominent for me.
So it's not compulsory that you will go through all the stages. There
No,
is
no, not.
possibility that you will go through only one stage or two stage.
Yes, yes. If I talk about my own, like one of our client case, again with the with divorce, this was being filed in High Court. The lawyer said, Shraddhanjali, ek do session leke dekho whether they are reluctant in getting the divorce. So I was doing a session. So the husband was okay because the husband has filed the divorce. Now the wife was also okay. The wife said, okay, if he wants to go up, like go away from this relationship, I would be accepting the fact. And after that, also, when the wife came up to me for a session, I thought again it would be a sort of stages. She was pretty easy. Like she was a cool sort of lady, which I met, that she said, I have accepted the fact. Both of them parted away because both of them was not being able to give time to each other. But both of them accepted the fact in a very easy manner. I did not take only, like I took only 2 sessions, and it was a full-fledged divorce. But again, if a similar case I talk about a Banshal case, Kotwala case, I had to work with this client for long 7 months. Judges were like, "Arey Shraddhanjali, kuch to jaldi karo." I said, "Arey sir, I'm doing it." Because at that time when judges are also in the state of confusion, because I remember the judge told me, Shraddhanjali, the moment they were in the court, husband was looking at the face of wife, wife was looking at the face of husband. With this sort of dilemma, the like court won't be giving the divorce, and then they refer cases to us, that whether they want, and that's the sort of court period we call, we give to the client, and they come with the therapist. We have a chit chat, not a chit chat but a sort of couple sessions. No single session. I would prefer single session. I go for couple session because both of them are coming. So it happens. It's not necessary we have to go, or we have to follow the synchronicity also. If I talk about a very like I won't say a very unique, but yeah, it was a very sort of unique case. We call acceptance as a sort of final stage, but I have seen acceptance as a sort of very first stage, and then bargaining. Firstly, the client has accepted that yes, I am being divorced. Sorry, I am being divorced. Now the client starts saying why, and that too after 5 long years after the divorce. Why me? I was like, it's a very unique case. So then I was being talking to other senior international therapists that whether it can be or not. So the stages can come upper niche. It's not that we have to follow all the synchronicity. And that is this reason why this theory or these stages are highly, highly contradictory.
Ma'am, is this also happen ki first you are having the stage of acceptance, then you are having the stage of depression, then again you are having the stage of acceptance?
Yes, yes. That is the thing.
Okay.
See, when I talk about bargaining, when I talk about anger, when I talk about denial, when I talk about depression, when I talk about acceptance, everything happens. But it can be depression is only prominent after bargaining.
Okay.
So yeah, it's very like I would say as a therapist working since so many years, I feel that yeah, those who have criticized these stages, they were right because it's very subjective. It's pretty subjective. As I said about my own friend case, she did not enter in any auntie did not enter the other four phases itself for so many long years, almost 20 plus years. Because if I talk about 2006 till 2024, she is in a state of denial. No, my daughter would come. And she did not give the right to us also to allow the like photo mala. And after it has been almost 6 months, she is in asylum. Still, she did not enter. Still, she did not enter. Because when I go for visiting auntie every single month, I get sad. Like I tend to cry after coming out, before entering and after coming out. So it's pretty subjective. It's not mandatory that we have to follow all this synchrony, like all these sort of stages. It can be upaniche, it can be anything. Just the thing is that if the client accepts the fact also, we have to keep an eye or we have to keep a track whether the client is coming back again or not. A sort of relapsion occurs or not.
Okay. Now I am able to recognize lot of situations relevant to this particular one.
Okay. Next is yes, the question addresses over here the stages of grief, as I said, but it's very like it's very subjective. And the second one, as you Neha ma'am said, coming back, it can be back and forth also. Coming back, again going, again coming back, again going, again coming back. So it can be anything. It's very, very, very subjective. For example, I won't cry if I won't say I won't cry. I was crying when I got my divorce, but today itself I was reading an article due to one of my news friend, like Pidiawala friend. She said that she saw a picture, a post where an individual was about to get a divorce or the divorce had happened and there was photo shoot celebration. I was like, मेरे को दिखा divorce का photoshoot कैसे होता है. Then I saw that she was steering the picture like pre-wedding picture, wedding picture. She was dancing in the photo with a sort of high heels. She was like saying some sort of languages. Then I realized, okay, fine, it's a divorce sort of photo shoot. So many photo shoots is coming right now. Divorce photo shoot is also one of them. So these stages are very now. If I understand this individual won't come to any sort of stages, accept not even acceptance. It's happiness because she said in that it was a sort of board interview which she said that I remember she said that it is the third marriage. Two marriage divorce, third wala also divorce. I said, Are baapre, so many divorce happens. Now this individual have to do some sort of issue like the girl has issues with her own personality, adjustment disorder. Picture prominent is adjustment disorder in terms of my knowledge. So it's highly, highly, highly subjective. It's not that you have to follow or we have to ask that, okay, you are not going to the stages of angry, then you are not going to come to the stages of bargaining also. You have to enter. We can't say that client. It's onto the client how the client is responding to the grief. Next, yes. Now the tasks of mourning. Now, as I said, how we are showing our sort of mourning, like how we are showing our emotion, whether we are crying, whether we are angry, whether we are irritated, whether we are frustrated, whether we are guilt or guilt feeling, anything. So there are four tasks of mourning. Number one is we have to acknowledge the reality, and this happens with the help of therapist. Without the help of therapist, the client is like, ये नहीं होगा मेरे से. Now, this has been given by J. Williams. He said, and this is a very cute wala theory, he said that if you are not following all the four stages or all the 4 points, then your mourning has not been completed. And it's pretty true. If you are not following all the four, it's not that you have to follow all the four at a gap of 1 day or 2 day, but if you are not even following any of the steps, that means your task has not been completed. Now, firstly, we have to acknowledge the reality, or we have to acknowledge the fact that yes, this is the way, or this is the thing which has occurred with me, or this is the incident which took place in my life. Next, the second is we have to embrace the pain. We have to walk with the pain. Now, for example, if I take my own example, I have accepted the fact, or I have acknowledged the fact, yes, that my divorce is pretty clear. Now,
Ma'am,
if I
PPT
was
is
not,
not visible, and
it's not visible.
PPT is not visible, I think. Actually, I'm not able to see PPT and you as well. Neha, ma'am.
Any
Ma'am, it's visible.
Neha, ma'am, ma'am is visible.
Yes, yes, she's visible.
Okay, I think problem is on my side. Okay.
ma'am, you can rejoin, not an issue. So now the moment I have accepted, or I've acknowledged the fact that yes, I have been in this situation. Now what I have to do, I have to embrace my pain. I have to hug my pain. Now it's a sort of visual hugging. It's not that I can hug my pain. It's basically I have to walk through my pain, through the sort of pain circle. That yes, I have to now lead my life. Next, after embracing my pain, what I have to do, I have to adjust, or I have to learn some sort of new adaptation techniques. For example, taking my own example, I have accepted, or I have acknowledged the fact, yes, me and my ex-husband have parted. I have embraced, because I was in a state of depression for 6 long months. It could have been extended, but I have acknowledged the fact. I have embraced my pain. Now, what I did when I got my divorce, it was in the year 2023. What I did, I started learning more and more techniques. Now, technique in terms of guitar, because I knew that I could have substituted with some new issues or some new activities. So I learned uh, guitar, though not every single day, but I know the modern playing and everything. And what I did, I learned some sort of other activities, which is for pottery, an intense training on pottery. Because at the time I utilized fine motor and gross motor, which can had effect on my dopamine, and I was pretty clear. So in the third process, we have to ask the client to learn to new adapt, like to adopt some sort of new techniques. Whatever the client likes, it can be reading a book, it can be listening to music, but definitely if reading a book, not a sort of breakup or sad story, it can be fictional, it can be something, but not which can lead the client to feel more guilt that are why. And last but not the least, we have to accept the fact that if someone have died, I would not get that individual physically, but that individual would be there with me mentally, and I have to develop a self new identity, which we call it as relocation of our own brain. This last point is a sort of term which we call as relocation of our brain. Firstly, I was with my husband. My husband is no more. Now what I would be doing, I would be developing a so-called new identity, because my surname is not there, nothing is not there, nothing is मतलब कुछ भी नहीं है अभी मेरे से. I would be developing my own new identity, that yeah, she is, people can't call me, oh Shraddhaji, you are the ex-wife of so and so. I would be developing my own identity. And if I'm not following all this process, as per Williams, I wouldn't have gone through the tasks of mourning. Clear mourning? Okay. Okay. Next is types of grief. Now I understand when I'm going to talk about types of grief, people who are not from psychological background can get confused, but please don't get. I understand. Yes, Neha ma'am. Something?
Please repeat the last stage of grief, mourning.
Okay. The last stage of grief is I would be developing our new self identity, which is called as relocation of our brain. If I talk in NLP terms, it's like rewiring of our brain. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So the very first type of grief is cumulative grief. Now, this is a sort of grief. Now, this is very intense and very, I won't say prolonged, but it's very intense. What exactly happens over here where there are multiple losses over a very short period of time? I'll tell up my own story. I had my divorce the year 2023, 19th, 18th May. On 20th May, I lost my aunt. On 20, like aunt matlab cousin aunt. On 19th May. On 21st May, I lost my aunt. 19th May, I had my divorce. 21st, I lost my aunt. 22nd, I lost my aunt's wife, husband, my matlab uncle. On 29th, I lost the full family. My cousin brother was there, cousin sister. I lost three of them. On 1st June, I lost again one of my close aunt. On 15th June, I lost my cousin brother due to a car accident. On 21st July, I lost up my cousin grandmother. And they were all in my favorite circle. कुछ भी होता था, I was like, I used to cry. I used to call them up in confidence and I used to cry. On 14th September, I lost my true teacher, like due to whom today I am over here. On 5th September, I lost my school teacher. And on 1st October, I lost my school principal. And why I am calling it as cumulative grief? Because they were all in my charm circle. Now, what is charm circle? This is a sort of circle which we use as a queer affirmative therapist, where we talk about our close friend. Good touch, bad touch, wala touch. It's like that sort of touch. So cumulative grief is like something where we are losing someone at a very shorter time. Like this today, this on Monday, on Wednesday, or on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, again a gap of 5 days, or again something is happening. So many grief in my place. That is a cumulative grief. Clear about cumulative grief? Okay. Next is absent grief. Now, absent grief is something which is in a stage of denial. People are not accepting the fact. The stages of grief. First stage is grief, denial. If I talk the case of my friend, mother, she did not accept the fact that she is no more. And this is pretty intense because aisa hi hota hai, people come up with. And they have emotions, they would say something I'm feeling here, but I'm not being able to communicate. Now I remember absent grief when I walked in a old age home. I'm not right now working with the old age people, but when I used to work in the old age home, they used to say, now for grief for them was completely different. Now this grandmother, she had two daughters, and both the daughters were highly like established. Both of them were scientists, and after marriage they went abroad. And they sent the grandmother, especially the mother, to them that please go out to the Vidhashram and you are going to stay there. We are not going to take your responsibility. Auntie, like this grandmother was a teacher, and she said, I can't say what are my emotions. I'm not missing my daughters, but when I used पाल पोस के जब the thing which she uttered, मैंने उस उन लोग को पाल पोस के बड़ा किया है. And I had some sort of financial crisis, but still I did not utter a single sound. I and my husband. Now, when my husband died off, my daughter gave me over here. Both the daughter, they gave me over here. I am having issues over here. This is what absence grief is. They won't be grieving. They won't be crying. Any sort of thing they won't be. But trauma is most prominent for them. Incident would be taking place or event would be talking. But grief is not there. Clear what is absent grief? Okay.
Yes.
Next is anticipatory grief. Now, what is anticipatory grief? It's a sort of, I won't say grief, but it's a sort of mourning. Now, इसमें क्या होता है? You are something of someone before actual death happened. For example, I knew my aunt is not going to stay because my aunt was also diagnosed with last stage of cancer. I used to cry. Like हम लोग बोलते हैं ना, we are crying in silence. That the sort of mourning happens. Basically, over here, anticipation of loss happens because of some sort of illnesses, divorce cases. I know whatever I can do, still my husband or still my wife won't be there, would be with me. Though the legal process had not happened, but still I can know or still I can figure it out that some sort of partition would be coming up. That is what anticipatory grief is. And it's not a grief, but it's more in the spectrum of mourning, not a grief. Okay. Now, breakup grief. Now, as who was talking about Neha ma'am about grief, like breakup. Now, this is only for those who are not married, are sort of teenagers, adolescents, wala feeling. Especially, you can see breakup grief in schools, in colleges, or even those who have not been married but they are in a relationship. For this sort of relationship, it's like they are in a relationship for last 5 years, 5 months, whatsoever, but suddenly a breakup happens. And then we use breakup worksheets. We don't use any sort of therapy, honestly. No one can use any therapy. Only worksheets so that the client can understand or can come back to the state of consciousness that yes, this is no more. And grief is very easy to handle among all the sort of grief. Breakup grief is very easy to handle. It's pretty easy. It would only, at least I can say, it would only take 5 to 6 sessions. But other grief ke liye, it would take up more than 10 to 15 sessions also. Especially if I talk about complicated grief, definitely I'm going to talk what is complicated and what is delayed. Till here, clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, complicated. Now, what exactly is complicated? It's a very sort of intensified state of mourning, very prolonged. For example, what over here, what happened now? This happens only with the childhood cases. Uh, my mother, I used to miss my mother, and still I'm carrying that grief with me. Very complicated and very intense. The intensity is at that peak, which is not at all healable. Like healable means you can't heal that. But we can ensure that the client leads a very healthy life with certain sort of like lifestyle changes. Complicated grief is very difficult to handle because there are so many therapists who says complicated grief can be cured. But mark my words, it's not at all cured. Especially when I did my trauma healing class or trauma informed therapy class, I asked my mentor that whether it's curable or not. Even in Western cultures, therapists we still say complicated grief is never curable. Others you can still heal up, but it won't heal up. The only thing is that the client or the therapist teaches the client to adapt that, yeah, मान लिया and now I'm processing. But grief would be there and it's pretty prominent. Next is delayed grief. Now, delayed grief is somewhere similar with absent grief, but in delayed grief, what happened are late onset. Yes, Shital ma'am.
Yes, Sradhanjali ma'am, can you please give one more example of complicated grief?
Okay.
Yeah.
You remember if I talked about my inner child that my mom and dad both were working and I used to miss them?
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah, I
That
remember.
is what complicated. Still, it did
Okay,
not heal up.
okay, okay. Thank you, thank you.
Okay,
The
ma'am.
the wound that does not heal.
No, no, no. It won't heal up.
Okay,
Even if you are doing therapy, art therapy, expressive art therapy, CBT, it won't heal up.
okay, okay. Now clear. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. And next is delayed grief. Now, delayed grief is more similar to absence sort of grief, but in absence, there is a sort of denial. They are not going to accept the. Yes, Neha ma'am.
Ma'am, so what kind of solution or treatment we can provide to the complicated brief patients?
Treatment नहीं होता है, ma'am. Honestly, what we do is that we talk about some sort of activities. We explain the client to change the lifestyle. Grief would be there. Let me tell you my own example. My mother was a criminal psychologist. My father is a businessman. So I remember that I did not get any time of my mom and dad, even though I got everything, whatever I wanted, like a sort of product things. But I did not get their love. Love matlab, yeah, they used to like me, they used to love me. But their sort of physical hug, or in PTM meetings, my mom and dad was missing. Only my grandmom and grandparents was there with me. Now, what exactly happened? Now, when my mother, because she is a criminal psychologist, she understood that, yeah, I have some issues, underlying issues with my inner child. She took me to session. And even at the age of 29 also, I went for session. Usme also, this sort of grief was not curable. What my therapist or my healer said, Shraddhanjali, it can't get cured. Because वो तो छोटे में हुआ था मेरे साथ. Childhood issues. But abhi, what I did is, I knew the techniques. But in this sort of thing, we as a therapist, we can't heal. Over here, only what I have seen in all my career, people don't come up for therapy session. They come out for vent out session. They don't, they tell. At least I have more than 50 plus clients till now also, who says that I want to take vent out session. Vent out session mein kya hota hai, that you are, as a therapist, in the perspective of a therapist, you are not saying anything. The time duration is only for 15 minutes to 20 minutes, not more than that. And that whatever the client is saying, you are listening. But therapy session mein kya hota hai? You are also, as a therapist, you are asking some question, you are giving some feedback. But in vent out session, nothing happens. They only come out, or they only come, like the clients come out who vent out their emotions. I also used to go to my like healers for venting out.
Ma'am, I can understand that. I can recognize this with this particular grief with the movie Dear Zindagi, in which Alia Bhatt was having that inner child problems. She was not able to deal with it before, but after the therapy sessions, she started accepting and dealing with that kind of things.
Yes, a complicated grief is much related with inner child. एक दिन में नहीं होता है. It's much related with inner child. The
So
hero
we
child.
can do cord cutting, ma'am.
Huh?
We
Yes,
can
we
do
can
that.
do. We can do. We can do cord cutting. We can do candle therapy also. Uh, Complicated grief, people who belongs from hero child, people who are scapegoat, they are morely diagnosed with complicated grief. Sheetal ma'am can relate now to the inner child classes. Okay. Next is delayed grief. Over here, grief happens, but any after so many months or after so many years. For example, um, I had a client, again, I had a client. This client was being referred to me by a sexologist, I remember. What exactly happened is that she came to a sexologist and so things happened. Now, when her husband died, it was when she was 29 or 28, something of this 20 wala group. She came up to sessions at the age of 35. When she was 35, she came up to me. Now, the grief happened at the age of 34. Like the moment she came up, it was 1 year back only, the grief happened. And then she used to cry. But if I take about a case from her itself, if I forgot also the what was actual age, leave it 28 or 29 है हम लोग ले लेते 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Almost after 5-6 years, the grief happened. And it was a delayed. हम लोग बोलते हैं ना delayed speech. That is what delayed grief is. It would come up, but late at a very long time, or after so many years, or after so many months. When my grandmother died, my mother had delayed grief. At least after 2 years, she used to cry. This is again a stage of grief. Clear what is delayed grief? Yes, Titika. Okay, I believe you are not audible, Titika.
Ma'am, please rediscuss absent grief and anticipatory grief.
Okay, absent grief is that where the client is in the stage of denial. The case which I shared of my own friend. After so many years, also, she did not accept the fact, or auntie did not accept the fact that her daughter is no more. That is what's absent. Absent, we mark in the report card na, or classroom book, absent, present.
Yes, ma'am.
That is what absent. And anticipatory is that, for example, I know that my auntie would be, I am doing an anticipation. For example, let me give you an example. Talking about my auntie's case, I know my auntie won't be there with us for a longer period of time, but at least I know she would be there for 3 long years with us. But the moment the moment I got to know that she had fourth cancer, like the last stage of time, like cancer, I started crying. But she was there with me, physically, mentally, whatever. But what I did, I started anticipation that what if my auntie is not there?
Okay. Okay.
Uh,
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome. Next is disenfranchised. Now, disenfranchised gift means where the society is not accepting in the grief, or the where the society is not accepting, especially in terms of the queer clients. For example, if I talk about, I had a gay couple long back. Now the couple, one of the couple died, like one of the partner died. And when the original partner, for example, A and B are gay couples, when A died, B was in a state of grief. But people did not validate the grief of B, validated the relationship also, because he was a gay couple. This happens also for prostitutes, those who are into the sex business. I remember I had a tomboy, same case. Uh, yeah, tomboy. He was a tomboy. So these are those losses where people or the society don't acknowledge the fact, or society does not gives the permission. Playboy. I had a client here and he was very cute. He said me, Sradhanjali, I'm a playboy. And both of them were in a relationship. The girl was too cute. Now the moment the girl died, sorry, the boy died, the playboy died, the girl did not get the acceptance from her family members because he was a tom like playboy. So this is such a relationship, not a relationship, but this is such a sort of grief where the society is not accepting the fact. The date of death. Now I remember when my dog died, my mother said, "Arey, please don't cry. I'm going to buy a new dog for you." I said, "Arey, mera kutta mar gaya. You are telling me not to cry." So these are, and this is very intense because you can't tell the client that, "Arey, please don't cry. Kuch nahi hoga. You can get up some other partners." This is from a very non-conventional spectrum of society which this happens. Clear? Okay. Next is normal grief. Now, normal grief covers all the grief. It's a very wide range which covers everything. In normal grief, there is one more. I don't know whether I wrote or not. Ha, I wrote it. In normal grief, secondary grief also comes in. Now, what is secondary grief? For example, I lost my husband. I did not had divorce, just a sort of visualization. I lost my husband. My age is 35, sorry, 30, and the age of my husband is 35. I am a housewife. I am completely dependent on my husband. I was completely dependent. So what would happen? I would be going through financial crisis also, identity crisis also, other crisis also, accompanied by my husband loss or husband death. That is what secondary grief is, where the original death is being accompanied by so many other losses. Clear about secondary grief? Okay. Now, tier model. Now, how as a therapist we can help the client? This is the first model we can help. That is the TEAR. TR means T, we have to acknowledge or we have to help the client accept the fact that yes, there is a huge loss. I understand. This is a sort of where we empathize the client. Next is E, where we ask the client to go back to visualize and experience the pain, then only we can help the client. Otherwise, we can't. If there is a sort of delayed grief, we can't. Absent grief, we can't, because we have to make the client go back with the help of visualization. And it's a very long process. The client would be going back, then we have to, not the we, sorry, the client have to go back, the client have to accept the pain. For example, I lost my husband. I'm going back to the graveyard where my husband was being there. I am right now experiencing that pain, coming back to my normal situation or in my present. As a therapist, now I have to ask the client to adjust to whatever is not there. For example, the moment my husband died, definitely abhi I'm not getting my husband. But what I can do, I can stay with my husband's memory. That is what I am adjusting to. I am adjusting to the room where I was being with my husband, but my husband is no more. Only the pictures are there. Next, what I have to do, I have to reinvest. Or as a therapist, you have to ask the client, reinvest in a reality. Now, over here, we don't have to spend any money. We have to ask the client that you are not spending any sort of money. What you are doing, you are reliving with your fact. For example, as I said, husband died, secondary grief. Husband died, which is being accompanied by financial losses or crisis. Now I am trying to experience what are the things I am good at, so that at least I can earn a living thing. I'm not talking about higher standard of living, but a majority, so that I can have a food, hand to food mouth thing. This is what the tier model is. Clear tier model? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, if you are doing any sort of therapy, now this is a sort of grief therapy, not counseling. The very first thing is that definitely a sort of mindfulness where you have to ask the client to do meditations, being mindful, being in the present, whichever process I said. Second is the cognitive restructuring, which would definitely require time. And cognitive restructuring is a process of CBT. Without cognitive restructuring, we can't help the client. And it won't be useful also. Because abhi you have entered in the process of therapy. Abhi counseling का कोई role भी नहीं है. Where we talk about what sort of blockage the client is, what sort of defense the client is using, whether it is a neurotic defense, whether it's a sort of immature defense. Then we have to work on that. Then sarcastic questioning is very, very, very useful. Without sarcastic questioning, you won't be able to help the client to understand that, yeah, this is not actual the thought which is coming up. This is a thought which you are bringing up. Then art therapy, any modality of EAT you can use if you know any modality starting from clay, mud, sand, hand, puppet, storytelling, any sort of therapy you can use. Then letter to the deceit. Now this is a sort of thing where we write letters. Definitely hota hoga. If I talk about navy cases, I have seen in navy, yes, I have seen in army cases, that immediately after marriage, I had a client, immediately after marriage, within a 1 month, the officer had to join the like military officer, I forgot, but he was in the border of Jammu and Kashmir, yeah, military officer. Now the moment he went, even after 6 months, they were parted because the wife was in Kolkata, husband was in Jammu and Kashmir. Only sort of virtual things was there. Suddenly, one fine morning, the wife came to know that the husband is no more because he was shot dead in the forehead. And it was an incomplete marriage. There were so many things the wife wanted to communicate. Though it was an arranged marriage, but there were so many things the wife wanted to communicate. So there, what we ask in this sort of cases, we ask the client to write letter. What are the things you wanted to say? And letter also happens in terms of forgiveness. For example, I am not liking my mother. Again, example. I don't want my mother to come back. Definitely, for example, if I tell that, अच्छा हुआ मेरा मम्मी मर गया. As a therapist, we can't appreciate this fact. So what we do, we use the power of forgiveness therapy or cord cutting. That is what letter to deceit. Then is symbols and reminders. Now symbols and reminders means remembering what are the things, chota chota, what are the happinesses which took place within the individual who is no more with you. For example, if you ask, then divorce ke liye bhi it works well. Yes, divorce ke liye also it works well. Because see, the one who have went for the process, I'm not talking about the one who are very diplomatic, but those who are highly emotional. उनके लिए divorce still parting away from the ex, still with the present, they feel that yeah, I'm missing my ex. For them, reminders are there. Birthday, anniversary, the first day we had a kiss, the first day we met, the first day we hugged. How did we hug? So that are the chota chota reminders. And then is acceptance and commitment therapy. We ask the client to follow the ACT method. This is ACT therapy, acceptance and commitment. We have to accept definitely. Then we have to commit that, yeah, we are there to heal. Without healing, nothing can occur. Even if it is a 10% healing, also, healing is mandatory. And acceptance commitment therapy बहुत long है. Like if I talk about acceptance and commitment, minimum 5 to 6 sessions are required for acceptance and commitment therapy. Clear about the therapy process in trauma?
Ma'am, is
Yes.
cognitive restructuring similar as cognitive behavioral therapy?
Cognitive behavior therapy is an umbrella, and cognitive restructuring is a part of CBT.
Part of it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Now, if I talk about ACT, like acceptance and commitment therapy, we have to use this sort of tools. Now, this is a like process or whatever you can call it as a steps, anything. The very first thing is that we have to ask the client to use their own value system. Now, own value means what are the things I liked, what are the things I do not like, a sort of liking and disliking. I have given worksheets in the drive. That worksheets we use for the first thing. What are the things the client likes? What are the things the client do not like? Second is how we can help the client or how the client can achieve their own desired goal. कुछ goal setting तो करना होगा. As a therapist, we have to help the client. Now, how can we achieve that goal? How can the client can get stuck or can follow the goal? Next is we have to understand or we have to help the client understand, yeah, it's very difficult coping with trauma or coping with grief, but how you are feeling every single day. Now, grief, there are so many clients who say, can I have session every day? For them, if you feel you can give time to them, definitely you can go on session every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But we are there to help the client only for a very shorter span of time, because this sort of client tend to depends on the therapist or on the healer, that without the therapist they can't do anything. I had more than 10 plus cases where they were highly dependent on me. Even if I was sleeping and it was 2 in the night, they used to call me up, because we feel boundaries are necessary, but every single time it's not, we can't. I don't know what about other therapists. At least in my cases, I can create boundary with all my clients. But if I feel that yeah, ये को इस client को मेरी जरूरत है, I can't create a boundary because they requires my intervention. So again, we have to ask the client. Next, we have to ask to be more active throughout the day. And over here, every single day's routine, we have to help the client to create Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I do it in two ways: one day for weekends and other day for weekdays. Monday to Friday, एक routine, Saturday and Sunday, different routine. Because time routines different हो जाता है. Next is we have to address their cognitive structure or cognitive distortions. What thought you are coming? What maladaptive thoughts you are coming out? What are the automatic thoughts? It can be in a case of OCD. Automatic thoughts, OCD. What are the thoughts coming? Why such thoughts are coming? We have to help the client understand this is only the thoughts, this is not the reality. And last but very important, you have to help the client to observe their own self, how the client is reacting, what are the things which is triggering the client, what are the things which is making the client feel very low, and then we have to erase that from the diary. And then gratitude and journaling is a part of ACT itself. We have to ask the client to journal every single day and to go for gratitude therapy every single week. This is what ACT process is. Clear? Okay. Any questions? Yes.
Sradhanjali ma'am, in this means if we are giving the grief therapy, so we can give them the daily routine like Monday to Thursday and then Friday to Sunday. The different
Monday
routine
to
will be there.
Friday, एक routine,
Monday to
and
Friday,
Saturday and Sunday.
the different routine will be there. And then you have shared one worksheet also, na, ki they will write the routine, how
Yes.
they feel, how,
Huh.
so that worksheet also we can give to them.
Yes, yes, yes. You can give. You can give.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes. Any question? Okay, Neha ma'am, Titika, Aditi, Ravinder sir, Rashi. Any question?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so the PPT has already been uploaded and the worksheets for grief has already been uploaded. If you feel that you all can't use the therapy, like you all can't use how to use, let me know. I'll conduct a separate session for the worksheets. So, Akanksha, you can close the recording. Okay. So I believe no doubt till now you all can check